Okay, everyone. So welcome this morning, and I'm very excited that we have some people here for our Franklin County Local Advisory Council update. My name is Matthew Otero, and I am the Senior Director of Data with tnAchieves, and I'll be kind of your guide today of showing you some of the specific data we want to present related to Franklin County today. Today's meeting is one of many that tnAchieves as an organization has been doing this week. We are actually doing 91 of these across the state, one for a statewide representation that we did earlier in the week, and then one for each county that we serve in. So we are very busy, but luckily through the luxury of Zoom, I guess, we are able to do this all from, essentially our own comfort, not having to travel. Because a couple of years ago, we would do these in person, and preferably, I think we would still like to do that, but obviously with the current environment, it's just not as able to do that right now. So what we're going to do today is go over some statewide numbers as well as see how they relate to Franklin County in general. And the reason why we do this is because in 2015, when Tennessee Promise was created, it was kind of written into legislation that the local county mayor would create a local advisory council that would receive these presentations and kind of communicate with us and just provide feedback and kind of ideas and suggestions of ways that they can help not only us be more successful, but then in turn help hopefully the students that they're serving also be more successful. So we invited a bunch of people and we appreciate you guys that are here today. And for those that are watching this later on, we appreciate you also giving us the time to watch it. But with that being said, your mics and cameras can be turned on at any point. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out, but we'll jump into it. This first slide is going to show just a quick review of how Tennessee Promise or how tnAchieves works as the partnering organization for Tennessee Promise. We are a nonprofit 501c3 that's privately funded and that serves 90 of the 95 counties across the state of Tennessee. So you'll see that all in green are the counties that we currently serve in, and the gray ones are the ones that the AIRS Foundation does the Tennessee Promise work with. Since we started back in 2008, when we were Knox Achieves and only working at Knox County, up through today, we've worked with over 440,000 students. We've recruited over 71,000 volunteer mentors, and we've worked with over 600 high schools and 67 eligible post-secondary institutions. And this is all tied to essentially the Tennessee Promise application that was adapted from what tnAchieves was doing as a private organization before 2015. Next slide is kind of a quick highlight of some of the things that tnAchieves has done in the past and is still doing today, and some of the newer things that tnAchieves is doing to try to help boost data revolved around college access and college retention. So the first three I'll talk about are kind of the ones on the top that are the Tennessee Promise logo, the people sitting on kind of a bench, and then the person shoveling. Those represent our three big pillars, which are the last dollar scholarship, the volunteer mentor, and the community service requirement. The reason I bring those three up first is because those have always been kind of a pillar of the tnAchieves program before we were even a statewide program. These three core components represent things that we find that are super important, that we feel like are needed, and that are beneficial for the student. So Tennessee Promise, which it is now, is a last dollar scholarship that essentially ensures every student that applies for it as a high school senior will have their tuition and mandatory fees covered some way, somehow, either through Let Tennessee Promise itself or through other forms of financial aid they may be eligible for. That's kind of the big carrot that students see, that families see, that gets them, hopefully to sign up for it when they are a high school senior. But in addition to that, we know that there's more to going to school besides just financial aid. A lot of it revolves around the resources that a student will have available to them. We know that students have great resources in the schools that they go to in high school. We also know that they have great resources when they are going to their college, whether it be a community college, a TCAT, or a four-year. But oftentimes, there can be that weird transition period where a student may fall through the cracks. And we know that. And so since we started in 2008, we have paired up students that apply either with tnAchieves or now with Tennessee Promise with a volunteer mentor. This mentor is just someone who's local in the community, but they serve as kind of that one-touch guide that they can go, that a student or family can go to if they have a question, if they're confused about communication that they're receiving from their school, or they are getting butterflies and they're not sure what their next step should be. They have somebody that they can turn to who can either help them directly or can point them in the right direction. And so that's one of the things we're really proud of and that we continue to do to today. And then the last big core component is that community service requirement. Since students are given this opportunity, our chairman at the time and organization in general thought the idea of giving back was essential. And so for every student to remain Tennessee Promise eligible, they must complete 8 or more community service hours before every semester that they plan on using the Tennessee Promise Scholarship. We'll dive a little bit deeper into some of those numbers and specifically Franklin County, but I like to highlight those 3 things because those have been a part of Tennessee Achieves since the very beginning. The 2 at the bottom represent some newer initiatives that we've started in the past couple of years. One revolves around summer programs, and one revolves our unique complete program that is kind of a combination work with our mentors and then also with the college staff that students are interacting with. To give you a little bit of information, the summer programs involve the Summer Bridge Program and the Summer Institute. The Summer Bridge Program is a 3-week academic boot camp that is hosted at all 13 community colleges across the state of Tennessee. And at those, during those 3 weeks, students are in an English, math, and reading class. And the reasons that they're in those 3-week classes is because generally they would have to take what are called learning support classes. Those classes are paid for by Tennessee Promise, and there's nothing wrong with taking those classes, but they can set a student back maybe a semester. And so students that are in that sort of situation can apply for the program. They can spend their 3 weeks doing it, and then they have the opportunity to test out of those classes at the beginning and then at the end of the 3-week period. In this past year alone, we saw an 89% success rate for the students that did end up using or participating in the Summer Bridge program. And that means that they either tested out of their learning support classes or showed improvement from the beginning to the end of the summer. So in addition to possibly being able to test out, students are able to be on campus for the first time, and they're able to kind of get that out of the way and not have to worry about what it feels like, which we all know now the first week of classes pretty much around the state started this week, what that can be like. They're able to kind of get an early head start. In addition, we also kind of created an online bridge program due to kind of what the past year looked like with COVID, which was definitely a work in progress, but we saw a success rate with that as well. And then, of course, there is the Summer Institute that is primarily only been in Memphis, but it's a hope of ours that we can expand it across the state in the future. The Summer Institute is a little bit longer of a commitment. It's between 6 to 10 weeks. This past year, it was 6 weeks that a student from the urban core of Memphis applies for. And they're in the same sort of boat. They are going to have to take learning support classes. But in addition to testing out of those, they also have the opportunity to earn college credit classes. And so this past year, we had 29 students take part in those. And it was a surprise to us, but all 100% of them, so all 29, were successful. So they all tested out of their learning support classes, got those credits confirmed, and they all earned 9 additional credit hours as well. So the same students who would have otherwise started a semester behind are actually going into school now the fall semester with 9 credit hours. And just to highlight, that particular program is focusing on students who 100% identified as a minority and 85% came from a low-income household. So some of our most at-risk students of transitioning from high school to college. We'll talk about all this stuff a little bit later on, but I just kind of like to highlight some of the things that we've done in the past that focused a lot on college access and some of the things that we're focusing on now to really boost these college retention rates as well. This next slide is, again, a review of some of the statewide numbers that we work in. So the counties, the high schools that we serve in, kind of which counties are rural and how many are distressed, according to the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development, the college partners that we have, and then kind of statewide what the breakdown is of where students are going to school. So if they apply for Promise and they remain Promise eligible, this is the breakdown statewide where students are going. 8 out of 10 are going to a community college, and then the other 20% are being split pretty much between a TCAT and a 4-year college. These numbers will obviously differ from area to area across the state. I know specifically in Franklin County, obviously Motlow State is very close. There's also, I think, TCAT Winchester is not, it's pretty much in the backyard as well. So there are, numbers that will fluctuate a little bit, but from a statewide level, this is where those numbers currently sit. If we dive further into the statewide numbers, this is kind of how it breaks down. So annually, Tennessee Achieves is working with over 60,000 students. So with each cohort, including the upcoming one with the class of 2022, we are anticipating over 60,000 high school seniors to be enrolled in the Tennessee Achieves program for Tennessee Promise. On average, 89% of all seniors across the state are Tennessee Achieves students. That means that almost 9 out of 10 of the students across the state are applying for Tennessee Promise, and then they are being in Tennessee Achieve specific. The other percentages are either students that aren't applying from Tennessee Promise or are in those 5 counties that the Errors Foundation is serving, and so they would be part of that percentage with them. The 78% number is showing you first-time full-time freshmen at a Tennessee Achieves Community College. 78% of those students on the campus are students that applied for Promise and went through the Tennessee Achieves program. And then that 86% number are students that have graduated from a community college. They are students that applied for Promise and then also went through the Tennessee Achieves program before they ended up going to their community college. Needless to say, that shows that we are in a partnership with our schools, with our colleges. Basically, if we can see success in our rates, then in turn, we're going to see success rates in the college, and then vice versa. It's kind of a symbiotic relationship there. The middle section there is showing you just some fun facts that we've kind of noticed that of those that apply for Tennessee Promise, over half of them are going to be eligible for a federal financial aid. So things like the federal Pell Grant. That means 1 out of 2 students are going to be eligible for that. And that's why we push things like the FAFSA requirement along with the school systems, along with the college staff, to make sure that students have that on file, because if they have Promise, then it may be supplemented with that federal Pell Grant. And if they happen to become ineligible for Promise, at the very least, 1 out of 2 of them is going to be receiving some sort of federal Pell funding that they can then use at the school that they're going to. 40% are first generation college students. That is self-reported on the Tennessee Promise application. So take that with a little bit of a grain of salt, but know that that is what students are identifying when they are applying for Tennessee Promise. And then 51% are students majoring in health science and STEM related fields. This is just a good snapshot when we look at the business side of the state. Tennessee Promise was created for the Drive to 55 Foundation, where we're trying to get 55% of the workforce to have a credential of some sort. And so the fact that so many students are going into these needed fields is an important look and an ability for the state to recruit employees or employers to the state so that they can then have jobs for these students to fill those roles. The bottom line is then just the operating costs, what it costs for Tennessee Promise to function across the state, and then the $2.5 million operating budget for Tennessee Achieves across these 90 counties. It's $2.5 million. Most of that is privately fundraised, with a small portion coming from the state for our complete program. All right, the nitty-gritty stuff that you guys came for. This is Franklin County specific data. This first slide is going to show us the FAFSA filing rate, which we've talked about briefly, and why it's so important, because it is essentially your application for the Promise application, or Promise funding, for the Hope Scholarship, for federal Pell Grants. It's a catch-all application. And then we also have the community service numbers listed there, because we do take pride in the fact that students are giving back to their community. So if we tackle the FAFSA filing rate first, you'll see that the statewide number is 86% this past year. That's still leading the nation, but it's actually a drop from the previous year. We were at 90% the previous year. And so, we know that COVID did a lot of things, and we do feel like that's a bit of a COVID hit. But with that to be said, it's great to see that Franklin County is above the statewide average. They are still above 90%, which just shows that, through a combination of the school system, through the college staffs in the area, students were being made aware of the FAFSA, that they were getting assistance if they needed it, and they were getting those submitted. So that's a very good, just awesome thing to see for Franklin County in general. If we look at the community service numbers, you'll see the number of hours up to date that Franklin County students have given back, which is just over 20,000 hours. And then the statewide number is just below 3.4 million. We hang our hat on that because our chairman, Randy Boyd, says that makes us the largest community service organization in the state. Although we don't know if that's for sure true, we kind of run with it internally. And it's something that we are just very proud that since we started in 2008, students have been giving back, and that hopefully these hours are being seen in the organizations in the county. People are seeing students volunteering, reaching out, and trying to give back, not only so that they meet the requirements, but also understanding the importance of giving back to their community. The next slide also is going to show us Franklin County numbers, and it's going to show kind of the timeline of students and where they ended up. This is looking at the class of 2019. So you'll see a comparison between Franklin County and the statewide numbers. So 2019 is represented from the number of applicants who enrolled with Tennessee Promise, and then their first year retention rate. And then that 3-year graduation rate is looking at the class of 2017. So if we go down the line, you'll see the number of students, and it's important to always remember that the number of applicants that apply for Tennessee Promise Some, this is going to be their plan A, and for others, it will be their plan B or plan C. And so that's why you end up seeing a smaller number with students enrolled with Tennessee Promise, because other students are going to not end up using Promise and they're going to the UTs, or they're going to MTSU, or they're going out of state. But for those that do end up going to, say, Motlow State or one of the TCATs, or one of the four-year universities that are eligible, we see the retention rates there. Statewide, that class of 19 was at 67% retention rate, and Franklin County was at 60%. So a little bit lower than the statewide average, but within striking distance. And then if we look at the 3-year graduation rate, we actually see that Franklin County is blowing the state out of the water when it comes to that 3-year graduation rate. Things to keep in mind is, I think, because there is a TCAT so close to Franklin County, that and the fact that they have a really high graduation rate is probably also playing a role into that. You probably have more students more evenly distributed compared to kind of the 80, 10, and 10 that I showed earlier of students going to a community college, TCAT, or four-year university. But regardless, that's still an amazing outcome that we're seeing from all of our college partners. So even though it's blowing the state out of the water, it's still a number that we know is not, we're not satisfied with that. And so this slide here is kind of taking a step back and showing from a community college level when it comes to retention and 6-year graduation rates, and then looking at Tennessee Achieves specific students. So for students that start at a community college as a first-time full-time freshman, they are retaining at a 53% first-year retention rate. And so this includes some Promise students, but it also includes students who did not apply for Promise. If we just look at students that applied for Tennessee Promise and went through the Tennessee Achieves program and went to Motlow State, went to one of the TCATs or one of the 4-year eligible schools, they're retaining at a 67% rate, which is what we saw on the previous slide. But if we take that even a little bit step back and just say, look at the students that applied for Promise and then went to any school. So Promise eligible schools or UT, MTSU, out of state, wherever it may be, they're retaining at 74%. And so in turn, we know that some of the things that we are offering in the Tennessee Achieves program, things like the volunteer mentor, things like access to the summer programs, the ability to seek out job shadow opportunities, those things are playing a small role, but making a big impact in students' retention rates and just preparedness. So that way, when they do get to campus, the college staff is able to work with them and make sure that they are actually staying enrolled in their classes, that they're signing up for the following year. And it's showing that we are having a good partnership with our college partners. When we look at the 6-year graduation rate, it's the same sort of thing, looking at just students that started at a community college for 6-year graduation rate, and this could include Promise students, compared to those that started at a community college but definitely applied for Promise and went through the Tennessee Achieves program. We're seeing them graduate at a 16% higher rate. The last little thing on that slide is just showing some of the impact we're seeing on retention rate for those new initiatives that we have started. So the ones I talked about at the beginning, the summer programs, Summer Bridge, Summer Institute, those programs this past year had just under 5,000 students. So out of those 5,000 students, we're seeing that they are retaining at a higher rate. For those complete students, we're seeing that they are retaining at a 23% higher rate, and those are just also around under 5,000 students. And then the Knox Promise initiative that has been taking place for a couple of years now, this is about under 2,000 students, but they're retaining at a 42% increase. And just for your information, Knox Promise is a pilot program that through a private donation, we are able to do the complete program, but expand it. So instead of only focusing on students that are low income, kind of a zero EFC, we're able to expand it to every student in Knox County. So those students are receiving a coach. They're being checked in on regularly. So kind of a combination with the colleges that they're going to, and they are just receiving that constant support. But also in addition to that, those students are able to apply for what are called completion grants, or better known kind of as emergency funding, for the costs that come with going to school that we don't always take into mind. So things like food insecurities, transportation issue costs, housing costs, books and materials. They have the ability to apply for that if they meet kind of the income threshold, and in turn can have that sort of challenge resolved and hopefully allow them to focus more on just being a student rather than having to worry about all these other issues that may be playing a role. That is a program that, like I said, is a pilot program, but one that we're trying to expand and try to work towards to have it be available statewide. So that way students from all counties, if they are in that sort of low income background, are able to apply for those grants and hopefully resolve some of the issues that would otherwise prevent them from ever stepping on a campus in the first place. Next slide is showing us the college going rate. As you guys probably are aware, in 2015, we saw a big jump of 4.6%. That so happened to coincide with the Tennessee Promise going into effect. That increase was more than the previous 7 years combined. And it was great. It was kind of a jolt to the arm for the college going rate in Tennessee. That then kind of levels out over the next couple of years between 62 and 64%. But then 2020 strikes and we see kind of COVID rear its ugly head again. And we see the college going rate go down below 57%. In Franklin County, we didn't see actually a huge drop. We saw it stay from within 0.4%. So that's an awesome, again, kind of just recognition for all the support staff within the school systems and then at the colleges, making sure that students understand what they need to do, making sure that they're being communicated with, and then helping them get and stay pretty much on level with the same college going rate that it was the year before. But when we look at it from a statewide level, we start saying, okay, what can we do with that 5% that it dropped essentially? How can we better make sure that we're in a better position to try to get it back into those low 60s, if not higher? Well, that leads us to mentoring asks that we have. With the local advisory councils, we can get a lot of information and a lot of connections through this group. You guys know what's going on in the communities, whereas we're based out of Nashville, Memphis, or Knoxville, so we're not going to always know what is going on or who are the best people to reach out to. So our biggest ask is we need to recruit the mentors that are going to work with these students while they're still high school seniors, and then make sure that they have them to help transition them into their fall semester, where then they can kind of be handed off with the college staff and our complete coaches. The roles of a mentor are not going to change. So they're still going to be asked to be a task manager, so reminders, sending them that kind of stuff. Be a resource, somebody that they can be turned to. If the family or the student has a question, or maybe they get a letter from their school that they don't understand, they can go to that mentor, and then that mentor can help answer it for them or point them in the right direction. And then the last thing is just continue to be an encourager. I think for all of us with the past year and a half, we could use a personal encourager, someone that just reminds us that, hey, even when times get tough or it gets rough, you can do this. If you need help, understand that there's help available to you, and that if this is really what you want to do, this will be available to you and you will be successful with it. We're not asking any more time for our mentors, still 12 hours a year. That part of the program is not going to change. They'll still be able to call, text, email with their students. They'll still be able to use tnAchieves Connect, which is the new initiative that we had this past year, where virtually mentors could log on. And in that portal, they would be able to see all of their students. They'd be able to communicate with them directly in the portal, see all the previous messages, set up a time to do kind of a virtual call if they wanted. All of it will be in one place, so that will not change. But one thing that will change is there will be some aspect of an in-person meeting if the mentor and students so choose. Before, if you guys have mentored in the past, you guys would know that we used to host these big meetings in auditoriums or gyms, and that's not going to be the case this year. But we are going to host what's called an open house, and this open house will be facilitated at one of the local colleges, and a Tennessee Achieves staff member will be there, and some of the college staff will also be there. And so this will be an opportunity to kind of just invite your students, if you're a mentor, to be able to meet in person somewhere. And then if you have specific questions about Tennessee Achieves or for the school itself, you'll be able to get those all answered in one place. So there won't be a formal presentation, but that will be available to them. And then in addition, we're also going to be encouraging mentors, if they feel comfortable, that they can reach out and meet up with their students, on their own. Our chairman, Randy Boyd, he does kind of a pizza party with his mentees every year, where he gets to know them and spend some time with them. So something like that, that's totally fine. Not required, but those are all going to be options available to our mentors as we all try to navigate this sort of in-person / virtual year for whatever the class of 2022 may encounter. So how many mentors do we need? Well, in Franklin County, we need 58. I checked this morning and we currently have 2 that have signed up again. It's just only recently opened up, and we have until December 3rd. And so as a local advisory council, if you want to mentor, we encourage you get that mentor application in, whether it be new or returning mentors. They can go to tnAchieves.org/mentors. But if you're not able to, or if you've already mentored, other ways that you can help us is by connecting us with those in your community. So if you have a listserv of people or a group of friends or family that you would like to send this information to, let us know. You can reach out to me, or you can reach out to our mentors team, so mentors@tnAchieves.org. And if you want a PowerPoint, or you're wanting some social media pictures, or just written documents, let us know and we can get that stuff to you, and then you can just forward it to the people that you want it to be sent to. But if you're also part of an organization, so I feel like for the most part, our outreach team does an amazing job of trying to turn over every stone. But if there's a Lions Club, a Kiwanis, a local chamber, a Rotary, any sort of organization that would be willing to have us and listen to us make a pitch about why mentors are so important for this program, we'll be there. So if you know people like that, send them our way, and we will try to schedule a date with them and make it work as best as we can. And then the last thing that we ask the local advisory council is just to spread the word that the Tennessee Promise application is indeed open. Last year, we think some of the numbers were down because students maybe didn't apply. We did not get the chance to be in front of students last year due to COVID. And so this year, we're planning on doing and being in front of them for at least some time. But we know that since the application is open already, we want to make sure that students know that it is open and they can start applying for it today if they want. But those are all things that as a local advisory council, we would ask, and that we would hope that we can work with you guys to try to resolve, so that way we can hit our mentor number that we need. Like I said, here is my contact information. That's kind of the end of our presentation. But at this time, is there any question or anything I can help clarify for either you, Jody, or for you, Tammy?